This is another tutorial to support our SGD 151 class. Today we're going to look at exercise 26 in chapter 14, which will use an external file to store zip codes and city names using a pound sign as a separator on each line. Just to give you an idea what that looks like, I'm going to go ahead and create that file. So I'm going to add a new item, and I think text comes out under the utility items, and I'm going to go ahead and add advanced 26.text. And notice where it puts it, it's automatically putting it in the right directory so that our finished program can use it. So I'm going to add that, and just so you can see what the text is going to look like, I'm just going to add those right now. So those are our zip codes that we're going to build into this. So I'm going to go ahead and save that and close it. So we go back to our C++ file, and obviously we're going to need IOStream for interacting with our user. We're going to need FStream to interact with our file. We'll have some string operations, and of course our standard using namespace standard. I'm also going to go ahead and decide to use three functions within this program, one being a display menu, which we'll just simply take care of the tedium of outputting our menu, and then I'll just real quickly go over what we want to do with this program, and then add records and display city. So if we read the instructions for this exercise, we have a couple different things we're going to work with. First is the program should allow the user to look up a zip code in the file and display the name of its corresponding city. If that zip code is not in the file, the program should display an appropriate message. That's pretty straightforward. But we also need an option for adding new zip codes and cities. And so therefore that's why we need an additional function that I've noted here, and that's the add records. So let's start looking at what we need to do to make this program possible. First thing I want to do is go ahead and look at what my display menu functionality is going to be. So remembering that it's going to return an integer value. So here's my display menu function. When it's called, we're simply going to come in, declare a variable, choice equals 0. Then we're going to have a menu get output to the screen with the options being add city or / zip code, display city name, or exit the program. And then we're going to ask the user to enter a menu option. They're going to input the choice, and we're going to tell it to ignore the new line, and then return choice to our code. So now we need to look at, okay, let's look at what we're going to be doing in the main function. Since we're going to be using functions to help us out with this process, with this program, I simply need to create a menu choice item and then execute the display menu, and from that I'll get back what the user wants to do. And then from this point on until the program ends, we simply will be in a while loop, and we'll be constantly checking for that 3 option, because again, when the user enters 3, that means they want to quit. So as long as they're not entering a 3, then we're going to operate on our within our while loop and just keep asking the user what they want to do. For instance, if menu choice equals 1, that means the user wants to add a record. So we're going to call our add records functionality. And again, notice that the function will be totally self-contained. Then we want to check for else if menu choice equals 2. We want to display a city that's already in our data file. And then if they entered something else that wasn't 3, but it wasn't 1 or 2, then we just need to do a cout and tell them invalid menu choice. And then lastly, we call menu choice equals display menu. So we're going to go get our new updated menu selection, and we can get rid of these extra lines. And that's all there is to that. Once we get through with this while loop, that means we're done, so we need to do a system pause. And actually, in this example, in this program, we could just come back because we're going to stay in that menu rotation until the user enters a 3. But I'll go ahead and put that in there just because that's the way we normally do things, and a return to come back from the program, and that's it. So now we're all set up to add our additional functionality. So we need to add the add records function first. So let's take care of that. So here's our add records function. It's a void function because it's going to do its operations without a need to return any values. So first we need a couple of variables to operate with locally, a city and a zip string variable, both set to an empty string. Next we need to create a file to work with, and we're going to open it, and again this is our advanced 26.txt file. As always, remember in class I mentioned there's 3 things we're going to do with a file whenever we work with it. We're going to open it, check that it opened, and then close it when we're done working with it. So here's the first part and the second part. Output file open, and then we go do an outfile.isOpen. First thing we need to do from the user is enter a zip code, X to stop. Notice that this is add records. It's plural, so this is designed to enter more than 1 or more new records to our file. So we do a cout and a get line as our priming read, and then we go into a while loop, and we check to make sure that the user hasn't entered an X or a lowercase x. We've just entered a zip code, so now we need to get from the user a new city name, and then we're going to output to the file a zip, #, city name, indel, and that'll just give us a new line at the end of the data we just entered. Then we do the cout, get the zip code again. If the user enters a capital X or an X, then the while loop will stop, close the file, and then return. Also note that if the file does not open, we give the user an error message so that they know that something went wrong with opening that text file. Okay, we have just the one more function, display city, where we're going to ask the user to input a zip code and then output the city name. So let's see how that's going to work. So here is our display city. First, we need our variables. So up top here, we've got 4 variables. We're going to input have some data and also output some things, so we need to set those up. So we're going to create 3 string variables: input, city, and zip. And then we're going to create a char found and set that by default to no, or capital N. We're going to create an input file stream this time, infile.open. And again, like I mentioned above, we're going to check to make sure that it opens properly. And again, if it doesn't open, then we need to give the user an error message. So we're going to go ahead and do this right now. Infile is open. We're going to ask the user to input a zip code, and then we're going to read records from our file. Notice that we're doing a get line in file to the zip variable and looking for a separator of pound. That will leave the get line function pointed at that variable, so that when we go to read it again for the city name, it's looking just after that. And because we don't give it a delimiter, it's reading the entire rest of the line. If we read an end of file, then we want to stop at that point, so that's why our while loop is structured this way. Remember, the exclamation sign or bang is simply inverting the result of EOF. So what you could read this to as is while not the end of file and found equals n. In other words, I haven't found it yet and it's not the end of file. Keep going. So first of all, I'm going to look at the zip value, and if it doesn't match the user's input, if it matches the user's input, I'm going to do a cout indel city name city, and then found is going to be set to yes. Else, I'm going to go and get a new set of data from my file and just repeat the process again until it reaches yes. Once I'm done reading through this file, I'm going to close the file, and if the found variable is still set to capital N, then I didn't find the file. So I need to let the user know that the zip code is invalid and to continue on with the end of this function, and it returns to the user. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and build it, make sure I don't have any code errors. So that succeeded. So now I'm going to go ahead and run this just to test it. Let's see. Let me add. I'm going to add my local zip code. Well, that was weird. So I'm going to add a zip code, 27502. Enter an X to stop. I get the menu, and now I should be able to 27502. Yay, city is Apex, so I'm all done. I've added one, I've searched for it, now I'm done. And that's all there is to problem 26. This is a good example of both outputting to and reading from a single file, as well as using void functions to solve a programming problem. Hope you enjoyed it and got something out of working with sequential access files. This has been Mike Shore for Peace University.